Welcome to Azeroth United, a weekly podcast about World of Warcraft. My name is Denethar, and I am your host.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It's Tuesday night in Azeroth, and we have a great show lined up for you. We're going to be going over some of the class and role changes that have come through in the Midnight Alpha. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the healer changes. There's a lot. Obviously, this is in flux. It's an alpha build, so all of this could change at a moment's notice, but it's an interesting look into Blizzard's design philosophy and how they see the healer role growing in the future. So we're going to be taking a look at that, as well as talking about all of the current World of Warcraft, Blizzard, and apparently Xbox news. So pull up a chair, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Before I get into all the news, I'll do a quick rundown of what I got up to last week in World of Warcraft. It was pretty much Legion Remix all day, every day. So I started off with the Blood DK, and that was my main character that I was running through Remix. And as I went through and as I started doing stuff, I don't know, I guess I was getting frustrated with the DK in that type of context. It just wasn't really working for me. I started the Arms Warrior on the other Battle.net account because I need to do two. And so the Arms Warrior is now item level 643. She's only 18% versatility. So it's this weird, somebody was talking about it in the Discord where you have this distinction or this difference between some people get more item level, less versatility. Some people get less item level, but more versatility. It just depends on the content you're doing. And I've been doing fewer raids, more dungeons, so I'm going to get higher item level, but a lower burst. Anyway, doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, these characters are all going to get way overpowered and doesn't really matter. But as it stands right now, Arms Warrior is a lot of fun. I'm actually having a lot of fun just goofing around with it. I started off doing the single button assistant because I was like, well, I don't know how to play Arms Warrior. I need to learn. And I very quickly put it together like, oh, okay, this is how this works. And it's actually really fun. And it's not a complicated rotation, at least not in a remix format. So I quite like it. Looking forward to maybe playing Arms Warrior in Midnight. We'll see how some of the melee classes shape up. But as it stands right now, I'm having a good time. So we did the Nighthold. Obviously, that's a really fun one. Running the Nighthold is great because anytime you have a raid with a split, right, it's easy for people to go one way or the other. And so for whatever reason, everyone's decided that you go through, was it Star Augur and then the High Botanist first, and then go to Tichondrius. Don't know why. That's just everyone decided. It works. It's fine. Running through there is it's interesting. I like Nighthold. It's one of my favorite raids, just in WoW, but especially in Legion. I think it's probably my favorite raid in Legion. I would say Nighthold favorite raid. Yeah. And the Gul'dan fight, like I said before, the cinematic at the end of the Gul'dan fight is one of my favorites of all time. So, really loving the Nighthold. People are, I can't tell if people are just starting fresh or if they're leveling up alts or what the deal is, but I have people coming in who it's like, you have no gear. It's like you just got to level 80. And I don't know, it's odd. I feel like everybody kind of rushed out at the same pace, but some people are picking it up on their own speed, and that's cool. But it is interesting getting into, like, if I go into a dungeon and I'm the highest DPS, I'm like, whoa, something's wrong here. This is not working. I should be the lowest DPS. Anyway, so that's what's going on there. I started in on the Suramar questline, and I'll tell you right now, I hate Suramar. Like, I know so many people talk about, oh, Suramar is so great. I love it. It's a beautiful city. I wish we could spend more time there. I hate Suramar. I hate the quests. I hate the citizens there. I hate dealing with the Lysra. I hate the whole thing. And maybe it would have been different during Legion itself if I had done that when it came out, because I didn't. I didn't do the Suramar questline until after I think it was in the Argus patch. I went back and I did all of Suramar on my DK. So, it's just to each their own. But Suramar, no, thank you. I could never do that again and die a happy man. So, but it's okay. I'm working through it and getting through these quests. So it's fine. And it's really nice to be able to go do Karazhan again. Karazhan is probably, so I love the original Karazhan, the Burning Crusade version. It's a great raid. It's easily one of the top 10 raids that they've ever done in WoW. I don't know, maybe top 5. I don't know if that's pushing it, but the 10-player content, the boss encounters, the trash, I mean, everything in Karazhan works. And so doing it in Legion, especially the first half, is really good. The second half gets a little weird when you shrink down and you're going through like the psychedelic tunnels and all that. It does get a little weird, but by and large, I feel like Karazhan was such a good dungeon. The Return to Karazhan, or whatever it's called. Such a good dungeon, such a good reintroduction to Legion for people who maybe weren't there in Burning Crusade. It's like, okay, here's this dungeon that, we've heard of Medivh or whatever, however you've interacted with it. Maybe you've never seen any of it before and this is the first time you were ever hearing of Karazhan. It's a cool dungeon, even on its own, even without the lore and the history behind it. So I really like Karazhan, and just overall having a really good time in Remix. You get to the point where you start playing the game of, all right, what content should I do? Where should I be spending my time on? And I'll be honest with you, as I'm going through it and I'm doing the raids and I'm doing the dungeons and just kind of doing different things, running around, I'm understanding now why Blizzard did the phased rollout, because you get sick of things really quickly. I don't want to go do Emerald Nightmare anymore. I'm done with it. I'm done. I still do it, but it's, I'm ready to move on. And then in about a week, I'll be done with Nighthold and it'll be time for Tomb. And that's perfect. So yeah, I'm really happy that they decided to stick to their guns on that. And it's like, no, we're doing a phased rollout. It's a lot more fun this way, I think. And yes, it makes it so that people are staying engaged longer, so that they have to produce less content and all that stuff. I get it. But even aside from all that, it's fun. I'm having a good time with it. So, I like the way that they roll everything out. I'm curious to see if we get a bronze boost or a infinite power boost at some points, maybe after all the phases have rolled out. Maybe that's what the 5th phase is. I don't know. We'll see. I think that would be really cool. I just don't know. I don't know what they have planned. So, so there you go. So that's pretty much all I did last week. I did some Legion Remix and, that was it. So this weekend, when we moved into our house 2 years ago, the kitchen has a lack of counter space. So we improvised, we put some things in there and we made it work. We needed a little bit more, but we didn't want to buy anything permanent because we want to redo the whole kitchen, but that's going to be thousands of dollars. And at some point we're going to do it. We just need to kind of be in a better financial state to do that. So we don't want to spend a lot of money on the kitchen because we're going to redo it anyway, but we needed something. So we went to good old IKEA and we picked up I forget what it's called now. It's like, it's a Besta. It's a storage system and it's modular. So you could just combine different components together. Well, that means that it's harder to put together because the instructions are super vague, because it's like, well, you could do it this way if you have this piece, but if you have this other piece, you could do it. And so I was going through this and I was just laughing at the ridiculousness of building IKEA furniture. Because it is really insane that this is what we've all accepted as a society, that this is what we do. And it made me think of the whole Wowkia series from Mego Art on YouTube about the player housing and the how we're going to decorate our houses. And it just, I was laughing about the ridiculousness of the whole thing. But anyway, that took up pretty much all my weekend this past weekend. It was a lot. So I'm sure everyone's put together at least one piece of IKEA furniture in their life, and if you haven't, then just know that the instructions are just pictures and there's no actual words in there. So you do kind of have to guess in some areas, like, is this what they mean? I think this is what they're talking about. Anyway, so that was my week last week. So anyway, yeah, I didn't get to play. I was looking forward to the weekend thinking, oh, I'm going to play all weekend. And then my wife was like, we're going to IKEA. It's like, oh, never mind. I'm not playing all weekend. But I did try the Swedish meatballs for the first time. And you know what? they're pretty damn good. So I'll give them that. Good job, IKEA. All right. It's just so weird. All right. I wanted to we got a new Spotify comment that I wanted to read here. This is from Bjorn Hervstad. Bjorn Hervstad. I don't speak Swedish, so I think it's Bjorn Hervstad. But if I'm wrong, I'm sorry for butchering your name so many times. I apologize. This is from October 16th. So this is from the First Impressions of Legion Remix episode 107. But I didn't read it last week because I had an Apple Podcast review that was older. So just trying to keep up with this. So anyway, this one's from Sweden. Björn Hervsted. The best podcast for us casual midlife WoW gamers. Casual and informative with a nice vibe. Heart. Keep going. Thumbs up. And then the reply he put in was greetings from Sweden. So thank you so much. Or they put in. I shouldn't assume that anyone is a he or she. I actually, I was looking when I looked at this comment. I was looking for the Spotify numbers, and I was actually surprised because it's a pretty good spread. But it's pretty much the 28 to 56 demographic is that's where my audience is on Spotify. And I thought, you know what, that sounds about right. So anyway, thank you so much for the comment. It's really kind of you, and it means a lot that people are actually able to go in there and give their feedback and give their feelings, and that they're enjoying the show. So thank you for being a fan. I really appreciate it. All right. If you want to leave a comment or a review, you can do that on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You put it up there, I will read it in the show. And if you want to say something nice and kind like our Swedish friend did, that would be great. If you want to say something ridiculous and hilarious, you can do that too, or rude. I mean, I'll read the rude ones too, but I'd prefer it if you didn't. But if that's, you have to do what your heart tells you. So if your heart tells you to be rude, I guess, who am I to judge? All right. I think that's enough of that. Let's move on to the news because we've got a doozy coming up.
It's time for the news.
In Blizzard news, so this one actually is a little bit of Blizzard news. It's really more Xbox news, but so there was an article on Windows Central, which is kind of like a gamer magazine for Windows type website. They do interviews and pieces, and it's like the old school magazine that's now a website. So anyway, they were talking about the new Xbox and how that's going to work. And so the crux of the story is WoW had put an article saying Xbox or WoW is coming to Xbox. That was the article that they put out. And so everyone lost their mind. That's not what's happening. So I wanted to go through this and clarify exactly what's going on, because a lot of people have been taking this and running with it. And while, yes, you will be able to play WoW on your Xbox, that is not, it's disingenuous to say WoW is coming to the Xbox. So let's break this down. First of all, we don't know exactly how the new Xbox is going to work because Microsoft isn't telling us. They're just saying that it's going to run Windows. So currently, all of the gaming consoles, I believe, either run a proprietary OS or they run some form of Linux OS, which, yeah, it does work for different, because all of these consoles are basically just fancy PCs at this point. They're not doing anything other than what a PC would do, but they are running proprietary hardware, proprietary software, things that make it so that you can't use your PlayStation to do something that it's not designed for, or use your Xbox to do something that's not designed for. So that being said, Microsoft has said that the new Xbox that is not coming out anytime soon, they haven't said when it's going to come out. But what they're saying is that it's going to be a Windows-based system. And within that, if you decide you want to get out of the Xbox console, you can just go into Windows. And so now it's a Windows computer. And so on Windows, you can run all sorts of things. So what the article says is, similarly, the Xbox full screen experience will allow you to exit out of Windows if you want to and run competing stores like Steam, Epic Games Store, Microsoft's own Battle.net, the Riot client, and indeed anything else you want. Indeed, you could run Adobe CC or Microsoft Office on the next Xbox if you so choose. And that's the point, is that you can do whatever you want because it is a PC. Yes, the game World of Warcraft as a game has been playable on console for a while. I think you could play it on a Steam Deck. You just need add-ons to allow the interface to work with the buttons on your controller. So I would assume that Microsoft is going to have Blizzard put in native controller support, especially for whatever the new Xbox is. Put in the native controller support for that, so that if somebody does want to exit out of the Xbox console screen and go into just the default Windows, then you can play WoW and have a pretty good time with it. The problem that I see with this sort of thing is that WoW is not a good console game. There's too much typing in WoW for it to be good on console. If, for example, it was more like League of Legends or Valorant or Overwatch or any other game where you get into the game and you're immediately put into voice comms, then I could see WoW being a better console type game, because then you would get into a group and immediately everyone in the group is forced into voice comms, and so you're all talking to each other. That would make a lot more sense. But first of all, WoW's voice comms are terrible. Everybody just uses Discord. I don't know that I've ever seen somebody successfully use the WoW voice client chat. I don't know. If you've ever used it and you have an experience with that, please tell me and let me know, because I'm curious to know how well this thing works. Or maybe I should just try it out and see. Anyway, so yeah, that's the big thing right now, is that it'd be really hard to type in game. There are other things that would be difficult, like setting markers, putting a skull on something. You wouldn't be able to do that sort of thing very easily. Depending on how many buttons you have, how many buttons are available to you, you can do that many things. And yes, one of them could be your single button assistant. So that covers the good majority of your combat, but you still have to be able to push cooldowns, your Hearthstone. There's things that you are going to need to do. And so it makes it a little bit more complicated. Your speed is not going to be as fast. Yes, people are able to do it. I'm not questioning that. The problem here is that, like I said, since the Xbox is technically just a Windows PC, it's going to run WoW. And I don't know what the graphics on this are going to be like. I don't know what the memory on it is going to be like. Typically, Microsoft underpowers their console because you don't want to spend a lot of money on a console, and then now it's $1,200, $1,400. But it sounds like that might be what they're doing here, is they might be raising up the price for the Xbox because it is basically just a Windows PC. And we don't know what that's going to cost. Is it going to be $1,000? Is it going to be $1,200? Would you pay $1,200 for an Xbox if you knew that you could play any game in the world on it? Anything that is playable on PC or Xbox, you can play on your new Xbox. The only thing you can't play on your Xbox is something that is proprietary to either Nintendo or Sony, PlayStation. Other than that, you can play any game, which I think is a huge win for Microsoft. I think this is going to go a long way to helping Microsoft. And people were talking about the way that Microsoft went about the Game Pass price increase, and they were offended by it. But the reality is, Game Pass at its current price point, or its previous price point, which was $20 a month, it was a pretty good deal. You move up to $30 a month, and now you're like, wait a minute, that's almost the cost of a full game every month. I'm not playing that many games. It's not worth it. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But if Microsoft puts more games on there, let's suppose they do put WoW onto the Game Pass, or some other Blizzard games that you're really interested in. Maybe you've always wanted to play StarCraft 2. Well, this is a really good way to do it. And maybe instead of being able to play the game, because like WoW has a subscription. So if WoW is on Game Pass, it doesn't really give you anything. You still have to pay the subscription. Maybe you get some sort of benefit by being on there. Maybe you get a cosmetic, you get a mount, you get some cool transmog, you get a pet, a toy, an Xbox Hearthstone, right? So maybe that's what you get for playing WoW through your Game Pass. I don't know. There are options out there, and I think a lot of people are very anti-Blizzard and anti-Microsoft, and I get it. They're big companies that make a lot of money, and people are frustrated with that. But at the same time, Xbox is struggling right now. They're struggling not because they're not making money, but because they're being pushed from corporate to make a higher profit percentage than what they're currently making. So apparently Xbox is somewhere in the single digits right now, and they're being tasked to get up to 30% of a profit margin, which is insane. That's like Nintendo profit margin levels. So if that's true, if this is actually a thing that, because this is what I saw, and I don't know, I wasn't able to verify it, but if it's true, that's huge, and that explains all the firings, all the layoffs, the canceled projects, all of these things that have been taking place over the last two years or so with Microsoft and Xbox. That explains all of it. Because one of the quick ways to increase your profit margin is to decrease your headcount. You go through and you say, okay, well, we're not going to pay people to do event planning. We'll hire a company when we have an event. Well, that works, but then you end up with Gamescom where they tried to announce Midnight and it was a disaster. So I don't know. At the end of the day, Microsoft's going to do whatever they're going to do, and if we end up with WoW on the Xbox, we do, and if with native controller support, so be it. Maybe that's going to be a thing that we're all going to have to get used to. Maybe we will all automatically get into voice chat when we zone into a dungeon or when you join a group. Maybe that'll be the case. Maybe there will be some sort of incentive for you to play WoW on your Xbox. Again, we don't know. There'll be people who do it just so they could get the cosmetics, right? I mean, if there's a mount, somebody's going to do it for that. But yeah, by and large, I think that this isn't really a news item. This is more of a this is just something that's happening with a Xbox, and it's going to come down the road at some point, and we're going to figure out a little bit more about it. But in the meantime, we just have to kind of wait and see. So hopefully Microsoft is not putting pressure on Blizzard to alter their game to be more Xbox friendly, because I feel like that when you take that idea and you combine it with the add-on apocalypse and the simplification of classes and the way things are changing in the game, which we're going to be talking about in a little bit, then you start to ask some questions. So can we do anything about it? No. And we can complain, but they're not going to listen. If Microsoft is tasking Blizzard to bring in more profit, then that's what they're going to have to do. That's the way corporate America works. So unfortunately, anyway, that's it. That's the news. I don't know when we're going to get more information about this console. But this story I will definitely keep up on, because it is tangentially related to Blizzard and how things go. So I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see where this ends up. All right, let's move on from that, because that's a meaty topic. And like I said, Twitter was on fire because of this. And just overall, it was pretty wild. So, okay, let's go on to some Midnight news. I'm going to save all of the class changes and healer stuff for the main topic, but there were a couple of things that I wanted to hit on before we get into that. So first of all, in sad news, we've found that ElvUI has decided to stop development for Midnight. They're calling it on hold, but if you have an add-on that's that big, if you've never used ElvUI, I'll explain it to you like this. It's a full user interface replacement. The textures, the fonts, your bars, everything gets replaced with an ElvUI version. Even the chat gets modified to their specifications for your chat box. So it's a really powerful user interface tool. because it doesn't just change your bars. It doesn't just change your hotkeys. It changes everything. And because of that, because it has its hooks into so many different components of World of Warcraft, with the changes coming to Midnight with combat and the way that it's going to interact with add-ons, the developers of LVUI have decided that they do not want to go through that work and that effort, because they're basically putting in all that time and effort for free. And while they might get some money off of it for CurseForge or Patreon, for the most part, yeah, you're not getting that money back, because that's a huge time investment. So I don't know who the developers, if they are, because I guess their LVUI is the product of another interface add-on that came before it. Anyway, doesn't matter. They're not updating the UI for Midnight. So that's unfortunate. That's our second big add-on loss for Midnight. So first week auras, now LVUI. Curious to see which other ones we lose before the end of the alpha period going into beta. Yeah, it's a bummer, because I did use LVUI back in the day. I used it back in, I actually used it a lot in Classic, which I don't know if they're going to continue to make LVUI for Classic. Yeah, that's where we are on that. It's just, there's too many things that are problematic for it. So, and I guess you can't really use LVUI on your Xbox anyway. So, speaking of Midnight, so other things that are changing, and this is good-ish. So the crafting professions and reagents, I mentioned before that they were reducing the number of ranks in crafted gear. That is not true. So they're going to keep 5 ranks in crafted gear, but the crafting reagents are only going to have 2 ranks. So you'll either have the low rank or the high rank. I don't know why they're doing it this way. Hopefully it'll all work out. I haven't, like I said, I still don't have alpha access, and I don't know if I'm going to get beta access unless I do the pre-order, which I guess I'll do that here soon. But yeah, so they're trying to simplify the process, and I do understand why, because the crafting system that was introduced in Dragonflight is really complex, and adding a new expansion with the War Within made it even more complex, because now it's this confusion of what am I doing? I've got to redo all my points. There's a lot to it. And I feel like Blizzard has, again, painted themselves into a corner by saying, hey, we're going to update this profession system with every new expansion. Well, that's great, but it doesn't really help that the profession knowledge system is so vast and so complex that it makes it hard for them to do cool updates like this without breaking something else down the road. So we'll see how it goes. I'm curious to know what the profession progress looks like. What is the expected? How long will it take to complete this? Right? What are we talking about? Are we talking about months? Are we talking about weeks? How long should we expect to be able to max out our professions and be able to make things exactly what we want? So, and that's really the question that everyone's going to want to know is, okay, what work do I have to put in to make this work? That's really all anyone cares about, because I've never been in a situation where somebody was like, hey, I want this thing crafted, but I'll take the lower one. It's fine. No, everybody only ever wants the high level component. So why are we pretending like anyone cares about the low level materials? Anyway, that's what we've got going on there. More to come. Again, this is the alpha, so this could all change tomorrow and be completely overhauled. But as of right now, just know that they are trying to simplify crafting professions a little bit. I think it's a good thing, but we'll see how that goes. The big one of news that I saw this past weekend, which I thought was fantastic, there's going to be a new Hall of Fame achievement for Delves in Midnight. So the way it's going to work is the first 2,000 players solo who get the ? Delve boss. Once you kill that boss, the first 2,000 players will get their name inscribed in the Hall of Fame. So you get the achievement, that means you're among the first 2,000 people to do it, which I think is really cool. I mean, I'm not going to do it because I've never even killed one of the bosses on ? I just don't care. That's not my type of thing. But I think it's really cool and exciting for people who do want that challenge and who do like a little bit of notoriety. That's a really cool thing to add in. 2000's a lot, but it's, I don't know. I think it's fun. I think it's a really cool way to reward players who put in extra effort and who really try and push the boundaries. I think it's great because anybody can go in and do it at the end of the season when they're decked out in gear. It's a lot harder if you're trying to get in and be one of the first 2,000 to do it. So I think that's really fun. I am looking forward to Delves because, for one thing, I'm ready to be done with Bran. Buddy. Now, I'm sure we'll all get sick of Valyria Sanguinar after a couple weeks, but, it'll be nice to have a change of pace. And the Delves look really good so far. Everything that I've seen, all the Delves look really, really good and really interesting. So, hopefully the Delve system is iterated on successfully. I would still like to see a little bit more end game progression. Give players some sort of path to get Mythtrack gear from Delves, I think. And I don't know what that would be because you can't do it with the current state of Delves. You have to do something different. And I don't know what that is, but I think it's important for people to feel like they are part of the end game system and not the junior end game system. So as it currently stands right now, no, you should not get Mythtrack gear from Delves. If there was something that was equivalent to doing a 9 or a 10 keystone or doing maybe a mythic raid boss, then I could see there being a case for having Mythtrack gear in Delves. But as it currently stands, there's nothing that's that difficult. So I don't know. I guess we'll see. So again, more to come on Delves. And once again, this is all on the Midnight Alpha, so this could all change at any moment. We just don't know. Yeah, so there you go. Okay, one other thing that I wanted to mention here before we get into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft is there was so I mentioned the vendor build that had the WoW token in it. And that was, the build was 1.15.8. And I know that's just numbers, but the original WoW, I believe stopped at 1.12. So 1.12 was the last patch of the original WoW back in 2006. And after that, it switched over to 2.0, which was the Burning Crusade. When we went back for Classic, we got 1.13, 1.14. We're on 1.15 now because Blizzard keeps adding to the Classic build with different things like Season of Mastery and Season of Discovery, Anniversary, all of these different things. There was a build that was uploaded to one of the vendor servers that was 1.60. That's 60. And at first I was wondering, did somebody mistakenly mean to say, oh, upload build 1.16, like 1.16, and they instead uploaded 1.60, 1.60. If some intern just typed in the number wrong, fine. But that build did get uploaded to one of the vendor servers. It's encrypted, so we don't know what's in it, but it's kind of weird. Like 1.60, that's a huge jump into it doesn't even make sense, like from a versioning standpoint. So it's possible that it was a typo. It's also possible the Blizzard is doing something completely out of left field. I don't know. It's I'm curious to see what ends up coming from this. But that did go up, and the last time there was a new vendor build, we ended up getting a WoW token out of it. So potentially, we still don't know for sure because Blizzard hasn't said. But it was data mined. So and there you go. That's what's going on. No other news for Classic or Anniversary. As I've said, Blizzard has been really quiet about both of those game modes, and it's a little weird. But all we can do is wait and see what Blizzard comes up with, because as of right now, it's almost like they don't exist. So yeah, I'm busy watching all of these content creators run circles around Classic Plus videos, trying to figure out, well, what do we want in Classic Plus? Zaryu did a whole stream where he had polls for his stream watchers. Oh, well, what features do you want in Classic Plus? This is the type of content we're getting because there's no news to talk about. So people are just making things up. It's a very weird time. especially since we've had so much news from Blizzard about all the different aspects of the game. For them to suddenly just go completely radio silent on Classic is odd, to say the least. So I guess we'll see how that goes. All right, let's go on to what's happening this week in World of Warcraft. All right, the bonus event this week is the Delves bonus event. You're going to get the Sign of the Explorer buff, Delver's Journey progress, companion experience, and undercoins increased by 25%. You can pick up the quest A Call to Delves from Archivist for Thrune in Dornogal to complete 5 delves in Khazalgar, and you'll be rewarded with a champion track delve item. So definitely check that out if you're trying to gear up, or if you've got an alt that you want to get some gear on, or whatever, you just feel like doing delves for no reason. They just gave you a reason, a champion track delve item. But the big thing for me is the Delver's Journey progress. If you haven't finished out your Delver's Journey, so 1, you're going to get bonus from the Turbo Boost, and 2, you're going to get an extra 25% from this. This is the week to finish up your Delver's Journey. If you haven't done it, get in there, run a bunch of delves. You'll get a bunch of progress. So the PvP brawl for the week is Shadowpan Showdown. Step into Tiger's Peak Arena and get ready for the Shadowpan Showdown. You'll race for control of a central control point and activate one of 2 bosses. The first to kill the other team's boss wins. I don't know. It sounded more like a WrestleMania thing. When you zone in, you'll pick up the quest Something Different to win a PvP brawl, and you'll be rewarded with Conquest Honor and Marks of Honor. As far as the holiday events this week go, we have the last bits of Hallow's End. That's going to run until November 1st on Reset. So what is that, next week? No, November 1st is Saturday. So Saturday morning it will reset, and then Hallow's End will be gone. So if you have not gotten your Headless Horseman mount, now is your last chance. Just get in there and try and get your mount. I mean, it's tough. So I think you get 1 shot a day, and then that's it. So starting on November 1st, though, we will get Day of the Dead. During the Day of the Dead, people gather in graveyards to celebrate with and cherish the spirits of those we have lost. One can find the festivities in the cemeteries of any major city, where celebrants cook, dance, don costumes, and more. So that's going to start on November 1st, and it'll run till November 3rd. And then finally, we have the Darkmoon Fair in town. The Darkmoon Fair is open for business. Meet Silas Darkmoon and his troupe. Play games that test mind and nerve, and behold the exotic sights from the 4 corners of Azeroth and beyond. So Darkmoon Fair starts November 2nd, and it will run till November 8th. And I will, till the day I die, advocate for the Darkmoon Fair. It's a great bargain. Go out there, get some profession skill or knowledge points, get the 10% XP and reputation buff from the merry-go-round or the roller coaster, do the daily quests. You can get the tokens, you can buy the old transmog, or you get the toys. And there's all sorts of things that you can get from going to the fair. But the fair is just fun. I really love going to the Darkmoon Fair. So check it out. Go to the Darkmoon Fair. Have a good time. Check out a concert. Fly through the rings. Get shot of the catapult. Do all that stuff. It's fun. You have a great time. I promise. All right. That's what's going on this week in WoW. We're going to jump in now to our main topic of the week, which is all of the class and healer changes coming in World of Warcraft Midnight.
It's time for the main topic of the week.
All right, so for our main topic of the week, we're going to be talking about healing changes in World of Warcraft Midnight. And while, again, as I've said many times this episode, this is all alpha, we don't know what the final product is going to look like, but we do at least have some insight into what Blizzard is intending, or kind of what their goals are for healers. Some of this is going to be interface related, some of this is going to be healer specific, but all in all, this is a discussion of what Blizzard is trying to accomplish through this consolidation of add-ons and sweeping healer changes. So let's get into it. Some of this is going to be a little weird as we try and parse through it, but all told, we have a pretty good idea of what Blizzard wants to do. So let's start off with last month, we got a post on the Blizzard forums. This was from Linksy talking about the healer changes coming in Midnight and asking for feedback from the player base. So she says, in the War Within, healing is generally very fast-paced, and healing spells can rapidly shift your raid from a severely damaged state to nearly full health in a matter of seconds. It is stressful to react rapidly, changing health bars, and it is very intimidating for newer healers to grasp what they should be doing at any moment. Healers have a very large variety of high-power cooldowns they can rotate through to handle basically every major damage event they encounter. Now, this is obviously the part of the problem, and when we went from Dragonflight to World Within, we had the same discussion, which was, hey, healing is problematic. We should fix that. And Blizzard tried a few different things. None of them worked. Healing actually got worse in the War Within. I used to play healers almost exclusively. I would play characters who could heal or characters who were a healing main because I enjoyed healing so much. And as Dragonflight ran its course, I started to become more and more disenfranchised with healing until by the time we got to the War Within, it was like, I don't want to play a healer anymore. I'm not having fun with it. I don't enjoy it. I had a Mistweaver Monk, I had a Restoration Druid, I had a Restoration Shaman, I had a Holy Priest. None of these characters do I play. I even started my Evoker, who I don't play anyway, started my Evoker as a Preservation Evoker and very quickly realized this is terrible. This is not fun. I'm not having a good time. So anyway, yeah, so they're calling out the War Within here specifically, but broader, Dragonflight really started the, I think the over cooldownification of healers, where everything is based on having a big cooldown available at a moment's notice. If you don't know the fight, if you haven't memorized the cadence of how things go and when to use your cooldowns, you're going to wipe, which is frustrating. So, all right, we're continuing on. In Midnight, we have made some changes with a goal of slowing down the rate at which you can heal up a party or raid from a severely injured state. We want healing to require less pre-planning or of knowledge of knowing which cooldown to use at which precise moment. We want there to be less ramp up of complicated ability sequences to get through effective throughput of your healing spells. Here's what we are changing for healers. All right. Now, remember, this was a month ago, so that things have adjusted since then, but this was kind of their baseline of here's what we want to do for healers. First off, talent choice nodes. Several major healing cooldowns are now mutually exclusive in talent choices, such as Restoration Shaman choosing between Healing Tide Totem and Ascendance, or Discipline Priest between Ultimate Penitence and Power Word Barrier. In other words, we don't want you to have a million cooldowns. We want you to have to choose, this is my big cooldown, which does make sense. See, back in the old days, and by the old days, I'm talking like classic WoW, there was one cooldown, maybe two if you were lucky. But like, for example, I played a Restoration Druid for a good chunk of classic, and Tranquility was your big cooldown. That's what you had. When things were falling apart, I can't tell you the number of times that I saved a group at the top of the stairs in Zul'Farrak by popping out Tranquility at just the right moment. It's just how it goes. Short cooldowns. Iconic buttons like Prayer of Mending, Wild Growth, or Healing Stream Totem still exist and should be potent abilities on their own. Several modifiers to these types of abilities have been adjusted, baked in, or removed. And again, this is part of the problem that Blizzard has created this ecosystem of combat where even from a healing standpoint, if you don't do things in the right order, and this builds on that, which adds to this, which empowers this other spell, which makes you be able to do a good job, that's not for everyone. I was going to say that's not fun, but I caught myself. It could be fun if that's what you enjoy, but that's not for everyone. And it's very difficult for new players or for players trying a new role to get into healing or whatever the case may be. Here we're talking about healing, but it applies across the board. If you're playing a damage character and you don't understand what your damage sequence is, it's really frustrating. So that's definitely a big problem that Blizzard has identified and they are zeroing in on. So rather than having these abilities require all this extra work going into them, they are trying to make these work and be just that's a short cooldown on its own, if that makes sense. Consistency. Core healing spells like Chain Heal or Flash Heal have significantly fewer temporary modifiers that greatly increase their power. We've increased that base throughput to maintain their effectiveness. So again, wanting to have your core healing spells be useful is obviously what you want to do. If I'm a priest, I want to be able to cast Flash Heal. and to know what it's going to do and not be worried that, oh, did I do this in the wrong sequence? And then my flash heal is going to not really do very much. And then finally, time to react. We want to shift your focus away from rotating through several high-powered cooldowns to selecting the right spells for the right situations. And that is what healing should be, is knowing all your spells and saying, oh, here's the situation. Everybody's taking a lot of damage. I'll use an AoE healing spell. Oh, the tank is getting hit by the boss really hard. I'll use some big direct heal spells. Maybe it's a matter of trying to figure out what it is that you need to do as the healer to keep everybody up while you focus on the next thing that you have to do. So sometimes it's, do you dispel first or do you cast a healing spell first? Do you cast an AoE heal or do you cast several direct healing spells? It just depends. And that's part of knowing your healer and understanding how to play a healer. Right now, that's so complicated because there are so many different components to it. You don't even know. You might think, oh, I'm going to cast my big heal, but did you get a proc before you casted your big heal? Because if you didn't, that big heal is not going to be very big. Or whatever. Did you pop your cooldown before you used it? Is the target hotted up? And did you put a shield on them so that you can cast it? You get where I'm going. So yes, Blizzard has identified this as the problem and they're trying to fix it. So here's where they wanted the player base to help out. So they said, there's a lot of changes across every healer specialization that we encourage you to read through and experiment with. We know we still have a lot of tuning to work on, and some Apex talents are still being drafted that will have impact on healer capabilities. The most useful feedback right now for us in these areas would be 1. What healing spells feel like you don't ever have a situation to use them? That's a really good question, because I can think of healing spells where it's like, I don't even know what that's called. It's just that icon that I put over on the side, but I never use it. Are there healing spells you still feel like you must have a bunch of specific criteria met to effectively use that spell? And again, we're trying to reduce the number of... It's okay to have some stacking of abilities that improve and empower the way that you're doing things, but if that's all your class is, that's frustrating. How does the pace of healing feel in Midnight compared to your experiences in the War Within? Obviously, you're just doing a comparison. Are there situations that feel like they are not reasonably able to be healed with the changes of Midnight? Please list specific boss encounters or abilities where possible. And finally, how does PvP healing feel with these changes? So this is what Blizzard put out there. This was a month ago. This was their kind of, all right, we're going to set the baseline. This is what we're trying to fix for healing. And I think these are good goals, right? I was going to say good changes. These aren't all things that have been changed. These are good goals that Blizzard is trying to reach. And so far, from looking through the talents and looking through the different abilities that have been removed or talents that have been changed or combined into one ability or talents that are now mutually exclusive, so you got to pick one or the other. I think that for the most part, healing is in a good place, at least on paper. I haven't had a chance to try out anything on the alpha because I still don't have alpha access, but that's okay. You don't need to be able to look through this and understand what Blizzard's goal here is. The goal is to reduce the complexity of healing and make it more about triage, which is what healing should be. If you remember, if you ever played in, I was going to say vanilla, but I think this might have been even all the way through Wrath. There was the first aid quest that you had to choose, and I don't know the Horde one, but I do know the Alliance one. It was in Theramore, where if in order to get your final rank of first aid back in vanilla, you actually had to do a quest where there was different levels of soldiers that were injured, and you had to bandage them, and you had to save, I think it was like 20 of them. And the difficult part of the quest was some of the soldiers were more injured than others, and they were all over the room. So you had to run around the room, click on a soldier with a bandage, and heal them up. But the more critically damaged soldiers you had to get to very quickly. And so if you had two of them on opposite sides of the room, sometimes you can only save one of them. So the goal there was to try and teach you how to think about triaging your healing spells. And obviously this is just first aid, but it was also a really good way to understand the way healing works, because there are circumstances in a raid where you might need to sacrifice somebody. You go, okay, that person's standing in goo. I healed them already. I put a hot on them. I can't do anything else. I've got to focus on someone else. And so that's sometimes how it goes. But you can't do that anymore because you're doing so many things and it's going so fast that you now have to, you end up putting healing spells on people that don't even need them because you're just trying to get your different buffs and your different procs to go off. So it is a little frustrating. Okay, so that all happened. And then Blizzard came out with another post. This was on October 22nd. So this was last week. Updates to healer specializations in Midnight. And this was the big, if you've already seen this, you know where I'm going. This is the big interrupt change. So as we continue to iterate through many changes to how the game will play in the Midnight expansion, we've seen a great deal of feedback on improving gameplay for healers. To continue that conversation in the alpha, we've designed some changes to diminishing returns, interrupts, and creature behavior that we want to test out with you. Now, this first one is really interesting because I feel like if when Blizzard puts these changes out, if we look at them through the lens of current game, if you look at this change in the War Within, it's a terrible change. But if you look at it in Midnight, this could be a much better change because it reduces the complexity of what it is that we're doing. So the first thing is the diminishing returns. So as a brief refresher, diminishing returns causes spell effects such as Fear or Root when used against enemy players or specially flagged creatures to have reduced effectiveness after each successive cast. In the War Within, the first Fear you cast will have a 100% of expected duration, the second will have 50%, the third will have 25%, and then you become immune. So you get your steps. In Midnight, the diminishing returns for these spells will now go from 100% duration to 50% to immune. So we're skipping the 25% stage. We also have reduced the amount of time for diminishing returns to reset itself from 18 seconds to 16. So you get 2 seconds back, but you're only getting 2 uses of a spell before the mob is just immune to it. Additionally, with PvE Combat Midnight, stun effects will no longer ever become fully immune against creatures susceptible to stuns. Rather, the duration changing from 100 to 50 to fully immune stuns will have a lower and lower duration until they reach a fraction of a second duration. In PvE combat, stuns should always have a tiny stun effect on the enemy, potentially interrupting a cast or its movement. So again, the goal here is to make it so that while you have diminishing returns on things like Fear or a Root, having a stun will always stun, but that stun will be less and less effective in terms of how long the stun lasts. So if it's a 3-second stun, then you do it again. Maybe it's a 2-second, maybe it's a 1 second, then maybe it's a half second, then maybe it's a quarter of a second. But every time you do it, it will stun those mobs because a stun will interrupt a spell cast, but it won't lock out the mob from casting that spell. Only a true interrupt will lock them out from casting that school of magic. So for example, if the mob is casting Shadow Bolt Volley and you interrupt the Shadow Bolt Volley, they can no longer cast shadow spells for a certain amount of time, which means that mob will go on to a different spell. If you stun them during the Shadow Bolt Volley cast, it will interrupt it, but they're not locked out from casting shadow spells, so they'll just cast Shadow Bolt Volley again, because that's the next spell in their shadow list. So that's where it starts to run into problems. So you can interrupt with a stun, but you can't stop a big cast with a stun unless you're about to kill the mob and you stun them right before they cast their spell, and then you try and burn them down quickly. I've seen that work. It does work. The other thing that could work is if you are about to interrupt the mob, but you have 4 seconds left on your interrupt and they have a second left on their cast, you stun them, and then when they cast it again, now you can interrupt because your interrupt cooldown's available. So these are the options that are available. So this is what they've put into the game. Now, why they're putting these specific changes in, we're not clear yet. We just know that they're putting these in, and I think it's because they're trying to reduce the overall complexity of spellcasters and interrupts. And we're going to get into that in here in just a second, but they're trying to reduce the potency of spellcasts and reduce the usefulness of interrupts. Interrupts will always be useful. But currently in the War Within, and especially in Dragonflight, there were so many interrupt spells that needed to be, or spells that needed to be interrupt, that it was really hard to coordinate, and you were just anytime somebody would cast a spell, you would just interrupt. I can't tell you the number of times I've been in a Mythic Plus and the group wiped and somebody said something along the lines of, "You need to interrupt." And it's like, well, there were 30 different spells that were being cast. Which one do I need to interrupt? So again, it's a matter of, do you know the dungeon? Because if you don't, you're going to be confused and frustrated when you die. So maybe they're trying to reduce that. Maybe that's part of the whole diminishing return effect. They're trying to reduce the number of things we can do to mobs to prevent them from casting spells, so that when they do cast a spell, it's big and important, and then we know we need to interrupt it. So we'll see. All right, so speaking of interrupts, let's just jump into this. At the beginning of the Midnight Alpha, we made a change to all interrupt abilities players have, increasing their interrupt duration by 2 seconds each. So this was, like I said, if you interrupt Shadow Bolt Volley, that means Shadow Bolt or Shadow spells cannot be cast for a certain duration. And they increased that by 2 seconds. So if it was normally 4, now it's 6 seconds that they cannot cast a Shadow spell when you do a true interrupt. That's things like Rebuke, Skull Bash, whatever your standard interrupts are. Kick, the original interrupt. So this change should make interrupt effects more effective when trying to shut down an enemy caster or have them move closer to engage in melee. So again, it's a good change. Healing can be a stressful role when you must manage several things at once: your own healing abilities, your team's health, and the enemy's actions. We feel that asking the healer to monitor the cast bars of things they don't have targeted while properly using their interrupts was asking too much. In the Midnight Alpha this week, and by this week, this was last week that they posted this, so this has been in there for a few days already. We've removed access to interrupts for all healer specializations except Restoration Shaman. These talents will be replaced with other talent nodes for healer specializations in a future Midnight Alpha build. We recognize that this is a significant loss of utility in some circumstances and want to make sure that content available to a healer is still completable, especially considering solo experiences such as special Delph boss encounters or any other solo challenge experiences. Restoration Shaman will keep access to Wind Shear, however. For Restoration specifically, the cooldown of Wind Shear will be increased to 30 seconds. We like healers having different capabilities and feel that Wind Shear is an important part of the Restoration Shaman's toolkit. Now, this is huge. So let's break this down. Healers have too many things to do, is basically what they're saying. They have an important job and there's too many things going on, and being able to split your focus between your teammates and their health bars and the mobs that are casting spells against you and being able to time your interrupt on those mobs is difficult. Part of this is, I think, because they're not going to allow you to use combat interface mods that update as you are in combat. So for example, like I use Voodoo when I heal. And so what happens with Voodoo is I can see all the members on my team, click on them, and it will cast whatever healing spell. If I right click, it does one healing spell. If I left click, it does another, etc. And then I can have a different mob targeted so that when the spell cast is going off that I need to interrupt, and maybe I get a notification from my weak aura, I can just hit my interrupt key and it will just happen automatically. That's how I've played things for the last 2 expansions, 3 really, Shadowlands 2, where that's basically what I've done is have that interface set up in that way so that I can target the mob, interrupt them, and then also have my teammates be healed. Shadowlands was, I think, difficult because not every healer had a good interrupt. Like I played a Holy Paladin for a good chunk of Shadowlands and they did not have an interrupt. There was no rebuke for a Holy Paladin in Shadowlands. You had to stun. You had Hammer of Justice. And so that's what I would do. I would Hammer of Justice the mob if I knew that I needed to interrupt the spellcast. So that was a really big deal for me. And so now we're kind of going back into that Shadowlands mode for all the healers except for Restoration Shaman, apparently, where you're going to have to use your other tools and abilities to interrupt mobs, your stuns, your movement, displacement abilities, things like that. So obviously that's not Blizzard's intent, but that's what players are going to end up doing. They're going to just use other tools in their toolkit to interrupt those spells, and then be frustrated when there's too many spells to interrupt and nobody has to interrupt available. I've seen this happen before, where they go, hey, we're going to take this thing away to make it easier for you. But they don't reduce the combat portion of it by enough, so that it just becomes frustrating. And then they end up having to either give it back or do a bunch of other changes to try and clean things up. Regardless, it is a little frustrating, but I think if Blizzard can get this right and reduce the overall number of interrupts, one of the things that I saw was that they said they don't want to have mobs cast spells that just are kind of routine. Like if they're going to put a dot on all the players, and the Blizzard wants that out there because it's part of the encounter, they might just have the mobs put the dot out there without casting a spell, because that doesn't trigger your brain to go, oh, do I need to interrupt this? Instead, what they're trying to do is they're trying to focus it on, here the mob is casting their routine spell, Frostbolt, 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 Frostbolt Volley. Okay, that's the one you interrupt, right? And so that's how you train yourself. You're like, I'm going to ignore Frostbolt, ignore Frostbolt. Oh, Frostbolt Volley, the big one, or Glacial Downpour, or whatever the name of the spell is. Who cares? That you know what the spell you need to interrupt is, or you will learn, because it's different than their routine spell that they cast over and over and over again. Maybe the first time they cast Frostbolt, you interrupt it, but then you realize, oh, they're just casting that a bunch of times and it doesn't do that much damage, so it's not a big deal. Now I just need to watch for the big spell to interrupt. But again, because healers will no longer have access to interrupt spells except for Restoration Shaman, other players in the party are going to have to make sure that they are doing that, which by and large DPS players are pretty good at. I've been in groups where it's a contest to see who can interrupt first, and you can see on the cooldown tracker, you can see everybody who tried, because their interrupt is now on cooldown, but only one person will get credit for it, so that will show in the combat log. So it's like a little game, like a little mini game that you play in a good group where everyone's trying to interrupt. Or the worst case scenario is everybody interrupts the wrong spell, and then when the big spell comes, there's no interrupts left. So regardless, it's still a weird situation, but I think Blizzard is going in the right direction. It's just a matter of how well can they maintain this. Okay, the final thing here, it says enemy behavior. With the removal of interrupt capabilities from healers, we're making an effort to change the behavior of enemies that use spells like Shoot or Frostbolt. We want enemies with these spells to more evenly spread their targeting to different players of your group, which should reduce cases where a single player might take a large spike of damage while others receive none. So again, this is there's 4 casters and they're all shooting Frostbolt at one person. So that guy's dead, deleted. They're trying to change the logic so that the mobs are targeting multiple people in the group, so that you can, since you can't help with the interrupts anymore, now you can spread out some AoE heals to keep everybody alive, instead of panicking and having to blow a big cooldown to keep one person alive because he got targeted by 4 Frostbolts. That's the goal here. We'll see how it plays out. I don't know. Again, I haven't done any of this gameplay. I've only been reading about it, and I've seen a couple of videos, but for the most part, it looks like this is a good plan, but we'll see how it goes. So that was the last, or the previous artist. This was on, what day was this? Wednesday. So Wednesday they posted this one, and then on Thursday they put out this article, which is how Midnight's upcoming game changes will impact combat add-ons. This one was really interesting to me, because what it did was it gave us the information across a couple of different gameplay types, and with the intention of looking at combat add-ons and how they are going to work in Midnight. So it says, across the World of Warcraft development team, we've been closely following community discussions about the upcoming game changes in the Midnight expansion and their impact on some combat-focused add-ons. As we approach the end of the first month of our Midnight Alpha test, we would like to reflect on the conversation so far, clarify aspects of our implementation, and share a preview of some upcoming user interface improvements. In other words, we're trying. We know you guys have been complaining, and we've been paying attention, and we're trying to do some things that will make that smooth over a little bit. So We began our alpha with the most restrictive version of our logic in place, ensuring that we were fully addressing add-ons' ability to provide an in-combat competitive advantage. But we did so with the expectation that feedback from players and from add-on developers would help guide us towards the areas where best serving our community meant loosening some of our API restrictions, adding new base functionality to shore up gaps, and or provide new tools for add-on developers to allow them to build effectively in this new environment. That process has been unfolding for the past few weeks, and we are deeply grateful for all the feedback that has shaped our priorities, blah, blah, blah. So in other words, everybody freaked out. I did a episode called Add-on Apocalypse. Everybody was panicking, and Blizzard intentionally started with a super restrictive add-on policy, and they've slowly been peeling that back layer by layer, like an onion, and just, okay, you can have a little bit back. You can have a little bit back, so that they make sure that they keep the core intact, which is to not allow add-ons to give you a competitive advantage in a fight, in an encounter, in a dungeon, in a raid, whatever it is. So they're giving a little bit back to the add-on developers so that we can go through this. As we've seen, a few add-on developers have already said, we're not playing this game. Weakara's LVUI. They're not interested. So will we see more add-on developers bail out if the changes aren't enough? Possibly. But they are putting things in place to allow those add-ons to still function in a slightly different way. And when I say slightly different, I mean massively different, because they'd have to rewrite their entire code, but that's a different topic. So let's start off with the power to customize. The main goal of changes coming in Midnight is straightforward. Add-ons should not be able to automate combat decisions for the player. Combat, air quote, combat is an important distinction here, as we have done our best to avoid interfering with access to non-combat information. Furthermore, add-ons should retain their ability to customize how information is presented to the player. This is really important. In Midnight, add-ons will continue to be capable of providing many of the features and customizations players have long enjoyed. This includes adjusting the look of almost everything you see in the user interface, such as raid frames, nameplates, action bars, panels, fonts, and art. Add-ons will also be able to present combat information to the player in ways that differ from our base UI. Let's use the new boss warnings UI coming in Midnight as an example. And I've seen a lot of people complain about the new boss warning UI, so this is perfect. This new UI presents the player with a timeline view of upcoming boss abilities. Add-ons will be able to take that information provided and choose a different way of displaying it, such as a stack of cooldown bars. They can now also change how the timeline looks to help with an accessibility need or for personal aesthetic preference. Add-ons can even add their own custom events to the timeline, such as break timers. And that was one of the big complaints originally, is you couldn't even do a break timer anymore because it was built into DBM. Anyway, as another example of Midnight add-on functionality, let's take an important let's look at important casts in nameplates. In Midnight, our base nameplate nameplates show the player when an enemy is casting an important spell by making it brighter and playing a flash animation around it. Add-ons will be able to adjust the appearance of that important cast state, such as making the cast bar longer, larger, or giving it a different animation to suit individual preferences. Overall, you can think of it this way: if the UI displays a piece of combat information, add-ons will, in most cases, be able to present that information to you in a different way. However, add-ons will no longer be able to use that combat information to drive custom logic or make decisions for you. And this is the really important distinction here. You can do whatever you want with the information as long as it's not giving you options like, oh, you have this ability, or you have this debuff, you should go over here. Oh, you have that debuff, you should go over here. Oh, you've got the boss is casting this ability, you need to stand over here. You need to follow this arrow. You need to go to this marker. Those are the things they don't want us to be able to have. But if you're concerned that I don't like the Blizzard default UI and I want to be able to customize how my add-ons or how my my boss warnings work, then you can do that. But the problem is that Blizzard is once again relying on add-on developers to clean up what they've done. So they created a boss warning UI, which was okay. I mean, it's fine. If that's all I had and that's all I've ever known, I'd be fine with it. But I know better. I know there are other things. I've used DBM for years. So what they're saying is add-on developers can take that information and present it in a different way, which is great. I like that. The problem is, are add-on developers going to be willing to do that? Because they're going to have to rewrite a lot of their code in order to make it match with the new Midnight system. So will there be problems right off the bat? Yeah, there's going to be a lot of problems. You're going to have mods like DBM bigwigs that are not going to work, that they're going to have to completely redo. If the Weak Auras team does decide to come back and go ahead and implement Weak Auras in Midnight, they're going to have to rewrite a good chunk of their code. And a lot of the functionality of Weak Auras is just gone. It's just gone. Now, what they don't tell us is, can you do things like have something do multiple things? Like, for example, if an ability is coming up, you can have it show up on a little bar, and then also maybe put some text up on the screen. That's one of the things I really liked about Weak Auras, is I could put big text on the screen that says, hey, don't do this, or tank swap, right? A big old thing that shows up on my screen. I liked that. That was cool, but you can't always do that, or you won't be able to do that potentially with this new add-on system. So is this going to work? I don't know. Obviously, there's a lot of considerations to be made here. And I know this isn't healing specific, but this is part of this article. And I feel like this is a really big part of what Blizzard is doing in Midnight. And healing is just part of this bigger equation, which is trying to simplify the game so that you don't have to have add-ons in order for it to work, but have add-ons to make it so that it is customizable for you in the way that you like, in the way that you enjoy. Now, if that's what we end up getting, I'll be happy. I'll be fine with that. If we end up with some sort of weird hybrid, I don't even know. I can't even imagine. I'm really concerned about add-on developers at this point and their willingness to be able to continue doing things in Midnight going forward. So, all right. The next one was accessibility, and this is huge. So I have 4 daughters, and all 4 of them play WoW in different capacities, in different ways, at different times. Some of them have been on WoW pretty much nonstop. Some of them cancel their sub for a while and then bring it back and whatever. So accessibility is actually a really big one for me, because I know that some people play the game a certain way. And one of my daughters struggles with the default interface and the default way Blizzard is doing things. So that's always big and very important to me. What they're doing here is they're trying to use text-to-speech to give you some additional information in a way that maybe would be difficult if you're having trouble reading. So I do understand that that's an important thing, that there are hard of hearing people that play WoW. And sometimes, or I'm sorry, I did that in the reverse. There are people that have vision problems that play WoW that need to rely on their hearing, and there are people who are hard of hearing that need to rely on their vision. I'm sorry. My brain is not working right. Regardless, what Blizzard is trying to do is they're trying to add in text-to-speech functionality to announce things. So much in the same way that you can use Weak Auras to announce or play a different sound when something is going on, they're going to allow you to use text-to-speech to say whatever the spell is, Frostbolt Volley being cast or whatever. I don't know how they're going to do it, but that's kind of the idea, that it will announce it out loud in addition to showing you maybe the interface option. So it says, as part of our continued support for text-to-speech, we're working on an addition for a new feature in Midnight to provide combat audio alerts. The system will allow players to turn on TTS alerts for various important combat events. Some examples include the ability to announce when combat begins and ends, to announce your health and resources at regular intervals, to play sounds when you gain or lose a secondary resource like combo points, or to announce your target's name and health, and more. So again, if people are having trouble seeing, especially when there's little text on your screen, maybe you can see your character moving around, but you can't read all of the details. This is a good way for you to be able to get that information and still play the game and still play competitively on a higher level. There will also be options to choose voice, speed, and volume settings. These options will appear in the user interface menu. Yeah, I want one with like a British accent or something. That's actually one of the things I like about Deadly Boss mods is you can change the voice for the countdown. So, you get some really cool ones. Anyway, I think that's great. The final thing here is healing and raid frames. And this one was a big one for me because, like I said, I use Voodoo. And I hate, first of all, I hate Voodoo. I hate customizing it because it's a pain in the butt to customize. But once I get it right, it's fantastic. It's like one of the best add-ons ever. Once you've customized it, I've literally sat and spent hours. Come and sit down at my desk to play WoW, log on, spend 4 hours customizing Voodoo, test it out, and then I'm done. I'm done with WoW. I haven't even played anything. I've just been customizing add-ons. They're trying to get rid of that sort of thing, which I understand. But what they're doing here is they're modifying the raid frames with healers in mind. So it says, over the past weeks, we've heard clear feedback from healers about limitations in our default raid frames. Yes, indeed. They are terrible. While add-ons will still be able to significantly customize the look and feel of these frames in Midnight, we are working on improvements to help address some of these issues players have been relying on add-ons to solve. We're adding a setting allowing players to choose from 3 different layouts in the information shown in each player frame. The existing layout, name top left, buffs on the bottom right, debuffs on the bottom left, dispels on the top right, will still be the default, but we're adding 2 additional configurations inspired by popular add-on offerings. For dispels, magic, poison, cure, curse, and disease, we're making them bolder on the frame so they're easier to notice, along with color and border visualizations. We're also adding support to display when a player has a major defensive or similar ability active. We would like to make role-specific debuffs like tank swaps larger, so players who are playing that role know when they need to pay special attention to them. Again, add-ons will still be able to reskin raid frames to create totally custom raid frames for those who prefer that. So I know they're saying that you can do custom raid frames. I don't know that it's going to be able to do all the things that we want it to be able to do. So this is a good first step in this direction, I think, especially being able to know when a tank swap is coming up, or be able to see the debuffs that are going that need to be dispelled. That's the type of thing that I really like. And the fact that Blizzard is willing to do this when they haven't touched the raid frames in years. It's been, I can't even tell you, I don't even remember when they put those in. Maybe Warlords? Maybe Miss Pandaria. I should look that up when the raid frames came into the game, but it's been a long time. It's been a long time, and they are basically the same as they were back then. So this is really big, and I feel like Blizzard can finally give us the information that we need. I would love to be able to play with the default raid frames. I'd love it. I hate having to have a raid frame add-on, but I need to. I need to use it because that's pretty much the way it works, especially when you have classes like a Holy Paladin or a Mistweaver Monk that heal but also need to do damage in order to heal. That's really frustrating because now you have a mob targeted, and so you need to go heal your teammate, and so you have to target your teammate and it'll heal them, or you hover mouse over your teammate, and so now you're moving your mouse around. It's just, the interface is clunky. Having a click to heal interface is, to me, is the most effective way to heal in this game. So anyway, there's a lot of work still to be done, and they're claiming customization. I don't know that I believe that. We'll see. Regardless, this is what Blizzard is trying to accomplish. They're trying to make the game more accessible for everyone, not just high-end players. They're trying to make the game add-on friendly, and by add-on friendly, I mean you can play it without add-ons. They are also trying to make it so that add-on developers can continue to run their add-ons, but it's going to require a lot of redevelopment in a lot of these cases. And I know that that's frustrating for a lot of these developers, and they're just not interested in doing it. Some people do it because they just love to, and that's great. I'm happy for that, because I don't think WoW would be the game it is today without add-ons. I think if Blizzard had blocked all add-ons back in 2005 or whenever that they decided, oh, this is getting out of control, then the WoW wouldn't be the game it is. It wouldn't. Might still be around, but it certainly wouldn't be as popular as it still is, even though it's much less popular now than it was back in the old days. So I think it's really important to pay attention to these changes as they're coming in from Blizzard and provide feedback when you're able to. If you're able to get into the beta, which, by the way, Holly Longtail said is coming soon. So, I mean, keep an eye out for that. So if you're able to get into the beta and try out some of these healing changes, post your feedback, submit it to Blizzard, put it on the forums, however you feel comfortable submitting feedback, do so, because that's going to make the game better for all of us. Unless your feedback is terrible, like, give healers the ability to tank and make everyone else just sit on the bench. That's not good feedback. Don't do that. But anyway, I wanted to go through this because I feel like sometimes these long form articles get lost and YouTubers just get on there and they sensationalize everything, and they don't really go through and explain what it is that Blizzard is saying when they have these very wordy articles. And what they're saying is they're trying to make things work better without add-ons, but it's going to be a challenge, and they've already admitted they're not going to be able to just lock out add-ons, and they're going to have to give access to all of these add-ons to be able to do things. So what the final result will look like sometime next year, we don't know. I'm hoping it works, and I'm hoping we end up with add-ons in a way that we are all happy with, or at least somewhat satisfied with. You're never going to make everyone happy, but if we can make people mostly happy, I think I could live with that. So hopefully that's where we get. And I'd still love beta access or alpha access if I could get it, but if not, beta access will work. So all right, and I think that's it for us. All right, that's going to wrap up our show for today. Thank you so much for listening, for watching. I really do appreciate it. It is always a pleasure and a privilege for me to get on this microphone and speak to you. If you have any questions or comments about the podcast, or have a particular topic that you would like to hear discussed, please email us at azerothunitedpod@gmail.com. That'll go directly to the worker bees that will dissect that and process it. It's just me. I'm the only one. If you want to get a hold of me directly, you can reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at Denethar, or on Blue Sky. I'm at Denethar there as well. I don't really use Blue Sky a whole bunch, but I am there. If you're enjoying the show and you'd like to help us out, you could consider leaving us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Those really help out the distribution. So if you were able to do so, I'd be very grateful. And like I've said before at the beginning of the show, if you are able to leave a review or a comment, then I will read it on the show. If you're watching us on YouTube, you could help us out by giving us a like and subscribe, and by leaving a comment there as well. So that really helps out. If you want to jump on our Discord server, you can do that by going to azerothunitedpod.com. That's got the link to our Discord server, all of our other social media accounts. It also has the link to our Patreon. Patreon is where people can spend their IRL money to help out with the production of the show, and I really do appreciate that. We have 3 different tiers of patrons. We do have a free tier that you can just get on to the Patreon. We also have 2 paid tiers. Our top tier of patrons is a friend of the show, and I'd like to thank those people now. That is Judge Omni, Stug Life, Thelial, Greybeard, and Raven. Thank you all so much. You definitely help make Azeroth United possible, and I think that's it. So thank you again, and it's been fun. I'm really looking forward to Midnight, but it's a lot of information going around, and trying to parse it all together and come up with a coherent podcast episode is a little bit challenging. So I hope I was able to succeed here. All right, thank you again. Remember to be good to each other out there. That's a real life person on the other side of that keyboard, and maybe they don't like playing healers, and they just they don't understand, and they just keep yelling at you to interrupt, and it's okay. You can just smile and nod, and you know what, just be the bigger person. I just know that maybe they're just uninformed, and that's okay. It's all right. You can just pat them on their little gnome head and just say, hey buddy, it's all right. All right. Yeah, I don't know why I decided it had to be a gnome, but it did. It needed to be a gnome that was yelling at you. So all right. Thank you again, and be good to each other. I don't even know what I'm saying at this point. All right, take care. I love you all, and I'll see you in Azeroth.